Good morning. I just want to thank you all for coming in this morning. I know it's summer break. Thanks for taking time to come in and just take a look at some research that I've done over the past couple of weeks before school let out. There are some of you all that I know directly have been directly dealing with this because, of course, this being a math PLC, I did my research over student assessment in the area of mathematics. What this is just a little bit of some new activities versus old techniques. The reason I gave it that title was since we have student achievement being on a steady decrease since new Common Core math standards have came in, I figured I would base this research on just taking a look at some new activities such as the use of technology and some different things that I'll talk about in just a minute versus the more lecture style methods that we're all used to. So that's where the title comes from. Then also down here at the bottom it says an assessment of the effects of using technology in middle school mathematics classrooms. Just an introduction, we know in the past 4 or 5 years mathematics classrooms, the content in there has changed dramatically. And due to that is where you see that just steady decrease of student achievement within those classrooms. And also, much like the students, we as teachers often struggle to find ways to incorporate new strategies, be it technology, be it different forms of assessment, just in order to keep our students engaged and still get that rigor that the standards are asking for. And then one last thing in the introduction there, it says that this is going to focus on mostly the implementation of those classrooms with technology. Okay, the purpose, again, all areas of a student's education are important, we know that, but with our ever-changing landscape dealing with STEM, mathematics is becoming the pivotal point of that, and that's what this is. The construction of mathematics content we know is kind of a stepping stone. It builds upon itself each year, and we see, as 8th grade teachers, I'm sure you guys 7th grade see it, 6th grade, so on and so forth. Each grade level, if a student is not where they need to be, it's hard to get them to where they need to be in our class. Let's say a 6th grade teacher, if they didn't get the 5th grade standards, then it's going to be hard to teach somebody that's in 6th grade material that doesn't have 5th grade knowledge. So what this is just a little bit of research trait, maybe to try to bump those students up. Okay. The research questions that were in here, number 1 was how does differentiation of instruction affect student performance and success? Again, that differentiation of instruction via technology, study island, was mostly something that we focused on with this research. The second one, what type of relationship exists, if there's any at all, among instruction, differentiation of instruction, implementation of activities, and finally response to intervention programs. What I did is I looked to see if these new technology standards and new technology forms had an effect on instruction, implementation, and also if the students in the RTI programs were benefiting from those as well. And then finally, how does the use of technology affect student motivation? So these, of course, were data figures, and then I put a survey in there just to see how students felt about it. As teachers, oftentimes we get in our routines, and we sometimes forget that sometimes we need to see if the students, what they think, because they're the ones that's having to do it. So I just put this in there just to see what students felt about it. All right. So just a little bit of review of literature to go along with this. The first one being differentiation of instruction. Says the fact that mathematics teachers struggle with meeting the more in-depth needs of their students is because differentiation of instruction in mathematics is relatively a new idea. This is, differentiation of instruction is still something that's new to us. We've been doing different tasks and different assessments, but when we talk about actually differentiating instruction, that's still a new form to us. And I'm sure those of you that's been teaching for a while, you've probably heard a word that's related to that, be it, some other name, but you're still kind of doing the same stuff, but actually differentiating is still kind of a new topic to everyone. And then when considering how to differentiate instruction that mathematic topics, we must keep in mind the 4 major dimensions students need to learn procedurally, conceptually, contextually, and investigatively. So those are the 4 areas that we really need to focus on in order to get those new content rigor standards to our students. And then finally, teachers must be willing to adapt or revise their current strategies and assessments to reflect all 4 of those learning areas. Okay, so those of you that's been teaching a while, you guys have really had to go back and take a look at what you've been doing for 15, 20 years because of these new Common Core standards coming in. So, this is something that may be beneficial to you in the long run as well, just maybe going back and take a look at some of these figures and stuff that I have. Next was review of literature, which was implementation of activities. This just said that much like adults, students are not so willing to change abruptly, believe it or not. And when it comes to the way they learn and complete assignments, much like us, students get in a rut. They do it a certain way, and whenever they get in a rut like us, they don't want to change. They've been doing it this way for so long, and that's the way it's going to be. And we have to be willing to show them the things and procedures they can do to help them change their procedure for completing activities and learning in order to help them. And then next on this one, in the PLC, which of course is where we are, model teachers work together and engage in recurrent dialogue to study their individual practice. Again, going back to what you guys do, what we do. We have, in our PLC, we have to be willing to get in that collaborative dialogue in order to get our student engagement and achievement where it needs to be. And then finally, teachers that are supported by the school provide them with well-designed and rich professional development and are able to create the same type of engaging and rigorous opportunities for their students in their classroom. So PD sessions for us need to be able to focus on student engagement, student achievement, and we have to be willing to take those strategies that they tell us in order to incorporate them into our classrooms and get that same type of excitement and get that same type of engagement with our students that these PD professors and things have with us. And then finally, RTI, review of literature. Everybody knows what RTI is. We have the program. Response intervention, of course, we would be dealing with the mathematics aspect of it. So in this one, response intervention has become a stronghold for assisting in system reform by providing a framework in which data can be relied upon as basis for making decisions. So what this is saying is we rely on data, our student achievement, in order to see where students are achieving at, whether they need to go into a remedial course, whether they need to be just kind of some one-on-one to get them where they need to be, or even taking it this far to where we actually have some intervention going on to get them caught up. And then Vander Hayden in 2013, which was one of the literatures that I looked at, discussed that educators determining students who will qualify for intervention should use a very sensitive screening task that is closely aligned with expectations. So don't just look at how a student is achieving. Look at how their work looks. Whenever you're talking about mathematics problem, go back and check and see how they're showing their work. Get those standards and those measurements for these RTI program more aligned with what we're expecting for them to do based on just looking at their grades. And then finally, as we know, it's complicated to make any summative statements about RTI research because it's still a very new idea. Yes, it's been going on for a few years, but whenever you look at it compared to some of these other programs, it's not been going on nearly as long. So just some of the methods and procedures for this research, just to kind of give you a background of what I did and what it required. The design of it was a math lesson covering exponents that was taught in 2 different classes. And then one class we used a more lecture-based method, and then in the other we integrated a more technology-based approach. We looked at Study Island. We looked at a couple of other math programs and just some research and technology that helped along with it versus them just simply sitting at their desk, looking at some examples and then going back and trying some problems. Just something different. And then each class of students were required to complete a pre- and post-assessment covering the exponents. Students' individual scores were taken on each and recorded. Now again, when we talk about that, I have a picture of it on here. The pre- and post-assessment were the same test. It was a few questions that asked different aspects of exponents, And again, they took it at the beginning. Then once we got through the lessons, the next day they took it at the end, and I recorded both scores just so I could have some data to compare. And then finally, student scores who are involved in RTI were examined separately. So I examined it all as a whole, and then there are 5 students that were in here that were also in RTI that I pulled out separately and looked at those with a more fine-tooth approach. So the participants here, we have 50 students, 2 classes of 25 in each. This was based out of 6th grade mathematics. Because this being a middle school, this is just something that I thought we could go down there and really get an assessment of where 6th grade was, since they're in that transitional mode versus 7th and 8th grade. 6th graders really go, as we know, undergo that transition from the elementary to middle school, so they've got a bunch of different things going on top of having to learn, new and more rigorous standards, them being part of still that gap group. And then also the materials that we had. Not a huge list. It was pretty simple. We had the pre and post assessment, which you'll see in a minute. We had the iPads for Study Island. That's what they used. And then we had a student survey that helped go along with our 3rd research question. That allowed me to go back and see what the students actually thought about it. And then had a scoring sheet for collecting the pre and post assessment data. And then, of course, we had the Microsoft Excel and for graphs and spreadsheets that allow us to make the graphs and things you're going to see in just a minute. You can't really see this. It's a little bit smaller. If anybody wants a copy of this, I have it. This is just the pre and post assessment document. Those of you that are sitting in front of you may be able to see it. There are 10 multiple choice questions on here. They're just simply A through D answer choices. And they ask just varying components of this. They have a number to a power, and you have to convert that from exponential form to standard form. Then it asks you a few different things about going, like number 9 says use one or more exponents to write the expression. This will of course be 3 to the 3rd power times 2 to the 2nd power. So it's just a few different aspects of exponents that we have to go in and look at, and this just allowed me to do just a quick pre and post assessment to see where they were at. Student survey, again, this is just 5 short questions. Again, if you'd like a copy of it, I have it. This was just more or less asking them using a Likert scale, whether this was very helpful all the way down to no help. And again, I've got a graph displaying their data for that as well. This is the results and findings. This is the graph for that, student assessment data. This is that's kind of hard to tell from where you guys are sitting, but again, if you want to copy this, I've got it. There are 2 different colors here. The post-assessment is the more lime green color, and the pre-assessment is almost kind of the bluish green color. And you can tell, those of you that can see it, most of these, which I've got it more laid out in a minute, most of these experience some growth. All right, you have 50 kids, and you can tell that for the most part, all of their pre-assessment scores were lower than their overall post-assessment. Okay. So just looking at research question 1, how does differentiation of instruction affect student performance and success? All except one of the 50 students that participated in the study showed growth through their assessment score. According to data, 96% of students showed an overall increase in performance on the post-assessment when compared to the pre. And 10 students, or 20%, students participating in the study showed a 10-point increase. And then 13 students, or 26% of students participating in the study, showed a 20-point improvement. 13, or 26%, also showed a 30-point improvement. 9, or 18% of those same students had a 40-point improvement. And then finally, we had 3 students, or 6% of that group who participated, that showed a 50-point improvement. Okay. And then looking at question number 2, research question number 2, said what type of relationship exists among differentiation of instruction, implementation of activities, and RTI programs. This graph is obviously a different graph. These are the 5 students that I pulled out. They are included in this very first graph that we saw a while ago, except I went in and pulled these individual students out and where I could look at them a little closer. You can see again, same, we have the post-assessment and then the pre-assessment. As you can see, all except for 1 student had some growth. Okay, post-assessment being the bluish green and pre-assessment being the more lime green color. So we could tell that there was a relationship going on there. I mean, something through all of these was helping these RTI students as well. All right. So just going in there and kind of looking at it more in depth. 5 students, all 5 of these students, 4 of the 5 students in here, 80% showed an improvement. And then if we go in a little bit closer, we can see the student 1 showed the most improvement of all the 5 students. This particular student was one of the ones that presented a 50-point increase on their post-test versus pre-assessment. Student 2 had no improvement between post and pre. However, that particular student had a very high pre-assessment score. Okay. Student 3 presented a 40-point improvement on his post-test when compared to his pre-test, and student 3's pre-test score matched the high score obtained by those 5 students. And then 4 and 5 both had a pre-test score of 60. These 2 students, along with student 1, all had the same post-test scores. However, student 4 had 20-point improvement. And then if we look at the results, 60% of students in this particular study had matching scores of 60. Okay, so all of these students except for student 2 involved in the RTI program had some type of growth. All right, and then finally the final research question here was 3. It says, how does the use of technology affect student motivation? So this is where I went in and just asked the kids what they thought. Fact and figures are good, but whenever we go in and take a look at what actually the students think, that allows them to give us their voice. And being a survey, they don't have to include their name, so they can really go in and select what they thought. So what the question was here is, how does the use of technology affect your motivation? And then this graph is what represents that. There were 5 questions on here like we saw a while ago, and you can see it's broken in into 4 different areas. You have very helpful, somewhat helpful, little help, and then no help. Okay, and then as you're looking at here, you can see that question number 2 had no response for little help and then no response for no help, but it had an extremely high, looks like 40 students replied that was very helpful to them. Okay, so let's go in and take a look at what they talk about it. Student responses to question 1 and 2 showed the most responses for very helpful. And again, if you want to copy this, I'll be happy to let you look at it. If you want the PowerPoint, if you want the survey, I have it all. I'll be happy to let you look at it, and you can have it. Question 4 showed the most student responses of somewhat helpful. Question 3 showed the most student responses of little help. And then finally, the possible answer of no help made up a minute portion of all the questions, except question 2, which no student responded with no help. Okay, so again, as you can tell, these kids responded to this use of technology. They enjoyed it. It's something different than coming in and sitting down, taking notes, doing an example, and then a worksheet or some type of paper activity. When you put something in their hands that they can enjoy, be it some type of activity, be it an iPad, just something different than a worksheet. That's what they've been doing for years. If we can just change that just that little bit, these kids are telling us it's working. They enjoy it. It's something different. And obviously their pre- and post-assessment scores show it as well. So some of the actions that you guys recommended just on previous discussion and before we really started this, after I told you what this would cover, some of the things you guys told us we need to do is just more focus on most effective aspects indicated by the results of assessment scores. So now that you guys see those, again, if you want a copy of that assessment, you can. You're more than welcome. 6th grade, you can have it. 7th grade, if you'd like to take a look at it. But again, these are things that you guys said what we need to do even before looking at this. So now, maybe even after looking at this, maybe we can go in and take some more focus on some different areas that will benefit our students. Next thing you guys said that we need to focus on is a review of student scores on Study Island in order to track and monitor progress. So Study Island is a big thing here. Science teachers use it. We have the math teachers that use it. And it's just something that everybody's really, really getting into. And many of you guys, I know the Science Hall gives extra points if they get a blue ribbon. So again, it's just something to get them in there and get them some extra practice and engage them to want to do better. That's the incentive that we can offer, okay? And then preparing and training mathematics educators on how to properly incorporate technological strategies into our classrooms. All right. So again, it's nice to hear. Yeah, that's probably what a bunch of people in here, including me, when we go to PD sessions. Yeah, this stuff is good. It sounds really good, but I have no idea how to do it. So instead of just having somebody come in and say, yeah, this is what we need to do, this is the improvement, it's doing great, somebody come in and show us how we can incorporate that into our lessons. Go in and tell us on a daily basis, this is what you can do here, and let us try it. I mean, yeah, we're not going to be proficient at it at first, but if we go in and try it, it may be something that we can build on. So don't just have, an instructor come in and tell you that this is, the silver lining behind this cloud, this is going to be the answer to all your hopes and prayers. This, tell us what we need to do. Help us incorporate it, okay? Don't just show it to us. So again, that was one thing that you guys really heard from a bunch of you. Have those PD sessions more centered around student achievement, but also allowing teachers the time and practice they needed to incorporate those. Okay, and then finally the conclusion here. As you can see from the data, it showed that the use of technology had a sizable impact on the student achievement and success in this particular lesson. So again, you can imagine some of the lessons you have the ability to be more creative with. You can imagine the impact that technology can have. Next was that techniques and strategies utilizing technology in the classroom should be more focused on and implemented. And then finally, teachers need professional development opportunities tailored to their specific needs and questions regarding technology implementation. Okay? So again, we need to have somebody come in, even once we have those people come in and show us this, maybe they need to come back from time to time and say, hey, how's it going? What can I do to help you? Are you using it? Are you struggling with it? What can I do to answer your questions? Okay? So have those people come in initially and then have them come back and, give a follow-up. See what else is going on. What can they do to help us? Have somebody that really knows the answer to our questions. Okay? And then just real quick, I'm just going to give you a few minutes to do this. Please answer the following questions on a sheet of paper using this Likert scale. You have poor, fair, good, very good, and excellent. Excuse me. There's just a few questions on here that I want you guys to answer, and you can just write your response in there on a piece of paper, and I will be more than happy to come around and collect them. Okay, so just here are the questions, and while you're taking those, I'm going to be walking around, and once you're done, just let me know, and I will come around and get it. Okay. Okay, is that everybody? Okay, thank you. So again, that's just something else I can include on here at the end, and again, get you all's thoughts and feelings about it. So just these survey questions: what is your knowledge level of educational technology? Would you rate it poor, fair, excellent? Number 2, how would you rate your last PD about technology? Number 3, how would you rate the technology support in your building, be it from administration, be it from technology integration, whatever? What would your support level be for our school? And then finally, how would you rate student use of technology in your classroom? Now again, I know some of you all use more than others, but that's fine. Some people are more comfortable with it, all right? Chances are that if you answered very high for this one, you probably answered pretty high for number 4, all right? These questions are pretty connected. But those of you that probably answered low for this, answered low for that one, and for that one. So that PD session can have that impact on you and ultimately your students. If you know how to use it, you feel comfortable with it, yeah, your students are going to be more comfortable with doing it, okay? All right, so that's just a little bit of research about student achievement versus our more lecture-based methods. Again, that was something that was done over a course of a couple of days. I wanted you all to see it. If you have any comments, if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those. If not, I know that I've kept you in here for some time on your summer break, and I'm sure you're ready to go. But again, I thank you for your time. Also, thank you for these. I will get a graph made up and just kind of look at it. And if you all want this PowerPoint, if you want the pre-assessment, if you want anything that you've seen in this PowerPoint, I'll be happy to give it to you. Again, thank you for your time, and have a good afternoon.